My name is Naomi Mercer. I'm 32 years old, and if you had asked me a month ago what kind of woman I was, I would have told you I was practical, steady, the kind of person who didn't fall apart in public and didn't make scenes just because her feelings got bruised. I ran my own contracting business, paid my bills on time, fixed what was broken, and kept moving even when life got ugly. What I wouldn't have told you was that love had a way of making me excuse things I would have called humiliating in any other context. That is probably why it took me 2 full years to understand who Adrian really was. Or maybe I understood pieces of it all along and just kept arranging those pieces into a version that hurt less. Adrian was 29 when everything finally blew up. We met through mutual friends at a bar trivia night, the kind of loud, crowded place where everyone talks over each other and still somehow hears exactly what they want to hear. He was handsome in a polished, effortless kind of way. Confident without seeming nervous, funny without trying too hard, and magnetic enough that half the room seemed to angle toward him whenever he spoke. He worked in IT support for a tech company downtown, not some major executive role, but you would never know that from the way he talked about it. He carried himself like the building would stop functioning if he took a sick day. I liked that confidence at first. I liked how direct he was, how he made me feel chosen. And for a while, I thought I had found someone who admired me too. I own a small general contracting business. It's not glamorous. No one writes movies about women standing in dust-covered boots, arguing over supply delays and permit issues. But I built it myself, from nothing. From long mornings, late invoices, sore shoulders, and the kind of exhaustion that makes you cry in the shower and then show up smiling to the next client anyway. It pays well. Better than most people assume when they see my truck before they see the rest of me. Adrian liked that part more than I realized. In the beginning, things were easy, in the way new love often is. We spent weekends wandering around the city, trying restaurants we couldn't really justify, catching indie films at a tiny theater he adored, lying in bed too late on Sundays, pretending the world could wait another hour. He knew how to create a mood, how to make ordinary things feel cinematic. But when I replay it now, I can see the hairline cracks. Little comments, little flinches, little corrections designed to make me feel just slightly less polished than he was. He would glance at my jeans after I came from a job site and say, "You're really wearing that?" in a voice light enough to pass as teasing. He made jokes about my truck like it was some loud, embarrassing relative I refused to stop bringing around. If we went somewhere nicer, he always seemed just a little too aware of whether I spoke too bluntly, or laughed too loudly, or ordered the wrong thing first. And in 2 years, not once had he properly introduced me to any of his work friends. There was always a reason. It's just a casual thing. They're boring. You wouldn't enjoy it. Office people are weird. I believed him because love makes patterns look like exceptions. Then, about a month ago, Adrian mentioned his company was hosting a big client appreciation party at an upscale hotel downtown. He was helping organize it, or at least that was how he framed it. He came over one evening with that stressed, urgent energy he liked to wear when he wanted sympathy. He dropped onto my couch, loosened his collar, and started talking about floral arrangements, guest lists, and a gift basket for his boss like he was planning a state dinner. "Jessica from IT is bringing her boyfriend," he said casually, scrolling through his phone. "He's a lawyer or something." I looked up from my laptop. "Can you bring someone?" He hesitated. It was tiny, barely a pause. But when you love someone, you learn the difference between a natural silence and a calculated one. "I mean," he said, "I guess you could come. It's just going to be a lot of corporate people talking about boring work stuff." I smiled a little. "I can survive boring work stuff. Moral support, remember?" He laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Around that same time, he had been talking more and more about money. His lease had gone up. Things were tight. He was trying to make a good impression. He never outright demanded anything, which almost made it worse. Adrian preferred suggestion to request. He had a way of circling what he wanted until you offered it yourself and then thanking you like you had volunteered out of pure instinct. So I helped. I paid for the outfit he wanted for the event, $450 gone with a quick tap of my card, because he said first impressions mattered, and he didn't have anything sharp enough in his closet. I paid for the gift basket for his boss, another couple hundred gone. Then there were smaller things. Last-minute supplies, decorative extras, all the little details that apparently stood between him and a flawless evening. It wasn't the amount that bothered me. It was how natural it had become for him to let me fund the life he wanted other people to think he already had. The night of the party, I got ready carefully. Not because I was trying to impress his coworkers more than I should have had to, but because I wanted to feel good beside the man I had spent 2 years loving. I wore my best suit, tailored enough to sit cleanly on my shoulders, simple enough not to look like I was trying too hard. I even booked a fresh haircut that afternoon. By the time I picked Adrian up in my truck, I felt composed, grounded. He barely looked at me. "The gift basket?" was the first thing he asked. "In the back seat," I said. "Good. That was it." "No, you look nice." No smile, no hand on my knee during the drive downtown. By the time we reached the hotel, I could already feel something off in him. Tension. Not nerves exactly, something sharper. The kind of discomfort that comes from being seen in the wrong arrangement. The lobby was all polished marble and soft golden light. Everything reflected something. Chandeliers, glass, expensive shoes crossing expensive floors. Adrian walked half a step ahead of me as we headed toward the ballroom, and just before we reached the entrance, he slowed and turned. "Maybe you should wait in the bar for a minute," he said. "I need to go check on a few things first." I frowned. "I'll come with you. Maybe I can carry something." His jaw tightened. "It's fine, Naomi. I'm already here." For a second, I thought he might argue. Instead, he just forced a thin smile and pushed forward. The ballroom was gorgeous. Warm lighting, trays of champagne, servers weaving through clusters of people in expensive clothes and practiced expressions. A live jazz trio played in the corner. Everything looked curated, controlled. The kind of room where everyone seemed to know exactly how to stand. Adrian changed the second we walked in. His posture straightened, his smile sharpened. His entire body seemed to pivot toward performance. He spotted a group near the center of the room and moved toward them immediately, and I followed because what else was I supposed to do? We had arrived together. I was his girlfriend. That was still the role I thought I occupied. "Adrian, everything looks amazing," said a woman in a sleek black dress. He beamed. "Thanks, it's been insane pulling this together." Then her eyes shifted to me. "And who's this?" There was a pause. 1 beat. 2. Long enough for my stomach to drop. I started to extend my hand and introduce myself, but Adrian cut in before I could speak. "This is Naomi," he said lightly. "My driver for the evening." The words didn't register at first. Not because I didn't hear them, because my brain rejected them on impact. The woman blinked at him, then at me. I was standing there in a fitted suit, hair done, makeup understated, holding myself like someone who belonged anywhere she chose to stand. Nothing about me said driver except the contempt in his voice making it one. "Your driver?" she asked, one eyebrow lifting. Adrian gave a laugh, too loud to be natural. "Yeah, she was nice enough to drop me off, but she's actually just heading out." Then he turned to me with that smile I suddenly recognized for what it really was, not charm, but control. "Right, Naomi?" For one suspended second, the room went completely silent inside me. Not outside. Outside, glasses still clinked. Someone laughed near the bar. A server passed carrying crab cakes on a silver tray. Music still played, but inside me, something cold and final slid into place. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the smooth confidence, at the impatience behind his eyes, at the fact that he wasn't embarrassed by what he had just done. He was annoyed I might ruin the version of him he had chosen to present. I touched his elbow lightly. "Can I talk to you for a second?" He followed me a few steps away from the group, not because he respected me, but because he didn't want a mess in front of them. I kept my voice low. "What the hell was that?" He checked over his shoulder before looking back at me. "Keep your voice down." My voice is down. "Look, these people are important. My career is on the line tonight." I stared at him. "So I'm your driver?" He exhaled like I was being difficult. "You're making this bigger than it is." "I paid for your outfit," I said. "I paid for the gift basket. I helped with half the details in this room." His face hardened. And then he said the sentence that burned every last trace of doubt out of me. "You should be grateful I even let you in." No hesitation. No shame. Just pure, effortless contempt. It is strange how quickly love can die when someone finally speaks to you in the language they have been thinking in all along. I felt hurt, yes. Humiliated, absolutely. But more than either of those, I felt clear. Clear in a way I had not been in 2 years. All the little comments, the jokes, the distance, the way he accepted my money but edited me out of his image. It all clicked together so cleanly that it was almost insulting. This wasn't stress. This wasn't pressure. This was him. I nodded once. "You're right," I said. For the first time all evening, he looked relieved. He mistook my calm for surrender. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't expose him on the spot, even though part of me wanted to. I just turned, walked to coat check, retrieved my jacket, and left that gleaming hotel ballroom without another word. The drive home was silent except for the sound of my own breathing. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my phone was lighting up with missed calls and text messages from Adrian. Where are you? Are you seriously leaving me here? Don't be dramatic. You're embarrassing me. I sat in my truck for a long moment staring at the screen, then turned the phone face down. For the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel confused. I felt awake, and somewhere underneath the humiliation, something colder had already begun to form. The next morning, Adrian showed up at my door like nothing had actually broken. He didn't knock softly. He knocked like he belonged there. Like the night before had been a minor inconvenience, not a line he had crossed so cleanly there was no walking back. When I opened the door, he looked exactly how I expected. Eyes slightly puffy, like he'd either cried or made sure it looked like he had. Hair perfectly in place. Outfit casual but curated. Even his exhaustion felt arranged. That was Adrian. Even his remorse came styled. What happened last night? He demanded before I could say anything. You just left me there. I leaned against the doorframe, not moving aside to let him in. You called me your driver. He exhaled sharply, already irritated that I wasn't matching the script he had in his head. It was a joke. God, Naomi, you're so sensitive sometimes. There it was. Not an apology. A correction. I watched him for a second, then said quietly, a joke. Yeah, he said quickly, seizing onto it. Those people are important. My boss was there. Clients were there. I can't have them thinking I'm... He stopped. Too late. Thinking you're what? I asked. He hesitated, then tried to soften it. It's just complicated. Office politics. Image matters. Image matters, I repeated. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping in. I didn't want them thinking I was dating a contractor. I didn't let him finish that sentence for himself. I'll finish it for you, I said. You didn't want them knowing you were dating a woman who builds things for a living. He winced, not because it wasn't true, because I had said it out loud. That's not what I meant, he said quickly, stepping closer. You're twisting it. I didn't move. I paid for your night, I said. Your clothes, your boss's gift. Half the details you're taking credit for. But the person standing next to you? I let out a small breath. That part didn't fit your image. His expression flickered. And then, just like that, he changed tactics. It was almost impressive how fast he could pivot. His shoulders dropped, his voice softened, his eyes glossed over. I was stressed, he said quietly. You have no idea how much pressure I've been under. That event, it mattered, Naomi. It really mattered. And then the tears came. Perfect timing. I messed up, he said, reaching for my hand. I know I did. I was stupid. I panicked. I just needed everything to go right, and I handled it wrong. I let him take my hand, not because I believed him, because I wanted him to believe me. I love you, he said, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. You know that, right? Last night, it wasn't me. It was just a bad moment. A bad moment. 2 years, condensed into a moment. I held his gaze just long enough to make it convincing. Then I stepped aside. Come in, I said. The relief on his face was instant. He walked past me like he had just fixed everything. Like love was something you could damage publicly and repair privately with the right tone of voice. I made coffee. He sat at my kitchen counter, talking, explaining, reframing, rewriting the night until it sounded like an unfortunate misunderstanding instead of a deliberate choice. I nodded in the right places, asked just enough questions. Let him build a version of reality he could feel safe inside. By the time he left, he kissed me lightly like nothing had changed. You're amazing, you know that? He said with a soft smile. Most people wouldn't understand like you do. I smiled back. I know. And just like that, he believed we were okay. The next few days were almost normal, if you ignored the way everything underneath had shifted. Adrian texted more, checked in more, used more heart emojis than I'd seen from him in months. He talked about future plans again. Weekend trips, maybe moving in together someday. All the things he had been too busy to mention when he thought he had me secured. It would have worked on me before that ballroom, before that sentence. You should be grateful I even let you in. Now, every sweet message felt like a performance. And I was finally watching instead of participating. About a week later, he called me sounding excited. Hey, he said. So my birthday's coming up in a couple weeks. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone even. I was thinking of doing a dinner, something small, just a few people from work at Antonelli's. Antonelli's, of course. The kind of place where reservations mattered and appearances mattered more. That sounds nice, I said. It will be, he said quickly. Good networking, too. You know how it is. I did, or at least I knew how he thought it worked. There was a small pause, then he continued, voice shifting slightly. I'm just a little tight on cash this month, after the party and everything. Of course you are, I thought. You want me to help? I asked. There was no hesitation this time. Would you? He said, relief flooding his voice. It would mean a lot. It's just the private dining room, around 1,200. They need a card on file. 1,200. Not a small number. Not a ridiculous one either. Just enough to test whether I would still play my role. I can put my card down for you, I said. He let out a breath like I had just saved him. You're the best, he said. Seriously. I smiled to myself. I know. He came by the next day to pick it up. Same easy confidence. Same casual entitlement dressed up as affection. I handed him the card. He took it without looking twice. Didn't check the name closely. Didn't question anything. Why would he? In his mind, I had already proven exactly who I was to him. Reliable. Supportive. Useful. So, I said lightly, leaning against the counter, what time should I be there? For the first time since he walked in, his expression faltered. Just a flicker. Oh, he said. It's just going to be work people. You know, shop talk. You wouldn't enjoy it. There it was again. The same pattern. Different room. Same script. Got it, I said, nodding like it made perfect sense. No problem. Thank you for understanding, he said quickly, stepping closer to kiss me. You always do. I let him. And as he walked out the door, card in hand, completely unaware of what he was actually holding, I felt that same cold clarity settle deeper. Not anger. Not even revenge. Just balance. The night of his dinner, I made one phone call. Calm. Simple. Efficient. I reported the card as lost. They canceled it immediately. Issued a new one. No drama. No fraud. Just absence. Then I got dressed. Better than I had for his party. Sharper. Cleaner. More deliberate. If he wanted an image, I would give him one. Just not the one he expected. I arrived at Antonelli's early and took a seat at the bar, positioned just right, close enough to see into the private dining room, hidden enough not to be obvious. At exactly 7:30, Adrian walked in. Confident. Relaxed. Exactly where he thought he belonged. And he wasn't alone. He walked in like the room had been waiting for him. Smile easy, posture straight, one hand resting just a little too comfortably at the small of a woman's back as he guided her toward the private dining room. She was polished, late 20s, maybe early 30s, the kind of composed confidence that came from knowing exactly where she stood in a hierarchy and expecting others to recognize it too. Her dress was understated but expensive, her laugh controlled, her attention angled toward Adrian like he had earned it. He leaned slightly toward her as they walked, not pulling away, not correcting anything, just fitting. I watched from the bar, a glass of scotch in my hand, and for a moment, everything aligned in a way that made my chest feel hollow instead of heavy. This wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. This was a life he had been building parallel to the one he showed me. One where I paid for the foundation, and someone else stood in the spotlight. More people arrived. Laughter grew. Glasses clinked. Adrian slipped seamlessly into the center of it all, introducing people, shaking hands, playing the part he clearly believed he deserved. I recognized a few faces from the hotel ballroom, including the woman who had asked, "Your driver?" She smiled at him now like nothing had ever been strange. I took a slow sip and kept watching. Time stretched. They ordered appetizers, took photos, leaned in close for group shots that would probably be posted later with captions about success and connection and amazing nights with amazing people. Adrian was radiant, alive in a way I had never seen when it was just the two of us. And every now and then, that woman, his coworker, I assumed, would touch him again. A hand brushing his arm, fingers grazing his back, a familiarity that wasn't accidental. He never moved away. If anything, he adjusted closer. At 9:45, right on schedule, the server approached their table with the check. I straightened slightly, setting my glass down. This was the moment. I watched Adrian reach into his jacket with complete confidence, pulling out the card I had given him. He didn't hesitate, didn't glance around to see if anyone else might offer to split the bill. Of course he didn't. That wouldn't fit the image. He handed it over with a small practiced smile, waving off the others like it was nothing. "It's my birthday," I could almost hear him say. "My treat." The server nodded and disappeared. Minutes passed. Laughter continued, but I could see the shift the second it began. It was subtle at first, a flicker of confusion crossing Adrian's face as the server returned and leaned down, speaking quietly. Then the confusion sharpened. His brows pulled together, his smile faltered. He took the small folder back, opened it, looked at the receipt, then at the card, then back at the server. I watched his lips move, watched the server nod apologetically, watched Adrian's entire posture tighten. Panic doesn't always explode. Sometimes it creeps. It starts in the eyes, in the way someone blinks too fast, in the way their hand lingers too long on something that should have been simple. He tried again. I could tell. A second attempt. Same result. The woman beside him leaned in, asking something. Others at the table started to notice. The easy rhythm of the evening began to fracture under the weight of something going wrong. Adrian pulled out his phone. My phone buzzed in my hand almost instantly. Adrian. Naomi, something's wrong with your card. Another message followed before I even unlocked the screen. Adrian. It's declining. Call me. I didn't respond. I picked up my glass instead and took a slow, deliberate sip. Across the room, I watched him type again. Faster this time. Adrian. This is serious. The bill is over $1,200. A pause. Then, Adrian, you're making me look like an idiot right now. I let that sit. Let the words exist exactly as he had written them. Then another message. And another. 5 in total. Each one a little sharper, a little more desperate. Around him, the atmosphere had shifted completely now. People were glancing at each other. The server had stepped back but remained close enough to intervene. The woman at his side had withdrawn her hand. Distance. Already. I finally unlocked my phone, typed slowly, carefully, and sent 2 words. Look behind you. He froze. Not dramatically. Just stopped. I saw it happen. His eyes flicked down to the screen, then up, then around the room with growing confusion. For a second, he didn't understand. Then he turned. Slowly, scanning, searching, and then his eyes landed on me. For a brief moment, everything in his face collapsed. The color drained, the confidence shattered. The carefully constructed version of himself, the one he had been performing all night, cracked so cleanly it was almost silent. I held his gaze, didn't smile, didn't wave, just existed. Then I stood up, set cash on the bar, and walked toward him. Each step felt steady, measured, like I had already walked this path 100 times in my head. The closer I got, the quieter the room became. Conversations slowed, heads turned. That subtle awareness people have when something is about to happen but they don't yet know what. By the time I reached the entrance to the private dining room, it was almost silent. Adrian was standing now, frozen in place, waiting, hoping maybe that I would fix this for him, that I would step into the role he had assigned me and smooth everything over. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope I had brought with me, and then I stepped inside. The shift was immediate. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Glasses hovered halfway to lips. Every pair of eyes in that room turned toward me, then toward Adrian, then back to me again, trying to place me, trying to understand why I was there. I recognized a few faces, including her. The woman from the hotel ballroom. Her gaze sharpened as she looked at me, recognition flickering. Wait, she said slowly, tilting her head. Aren't you... The driver? Someone else finished, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth like he thought he was in on a joke. I smiled politely. Actually, I said, my voice calm, steady, carrying just enough to reach everyone at the table. I was his girlfriend for the last 2 years. The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel. Adrian took a step toward me, his voice low, urgent. Naomi, can we not do this here? I didn't look at him. Not yet. Instead, I walked closer to the table and set the envelope down in the center, right between the half-empty glasses and folded napkins. I won't take long, I said lightly. I just figured, since we're all here, it would be nice to clear up any confusion. I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of photos. Nothing dramatic. Just moments. Us at dinner. Us on a beach. Us standing too close in someone else's wedding picture. Ordinary things that only look ordinary until you realize they're proof. I laid them out one by one across the table. 2 years spread in silence. I've been with Adrian for the last 2 years, I continued, which is why I found it a little strange when he introduced me as his driver at his company event. A few people shifted in their seats. The woman from the party glanced at Adrian, then back at me, her expression no longer amused. I also happened to be the one who paid for the outfit he wore that night, I added, tapping one of the photos lightly. The gift basket for his boss, and a few of the other details that made everything look so impressive. Adrian's face had gone completely rigid. Naomi, he said through clenched teeth, enough. Now I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time since that ballroom, he didn't look composed. He looked small. Oh, I'm almost done, I said softly. I reached into the envelope again and pulled out the small receipt folder the server had returned to him earlier, still resting near his plate. Then I slid it back toward him. "The card you just tried to use?" I said. "It was canceled yesterday." The room went colder. "You did what?" he snapped, his voice rising despite himself. I held his gaze. "I reported it as lost," I said simply, which it technically was. A few quiet breaths moved around the table. Someone shifted uncomfortably. The woman who had been sitting close to him, the one with her hand on his back earlier, leaned away, her body language changing so quickly it was almost clinical. "Distance." Again. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, panic finally breaking through the surface. "You can't do this. Not here. Just fix it. Pay the bill and we'll talk about this later." There it was. Not an apology. Not even an attempt. Just expectation. I glanced around the table, at the people who had been laughing with him less than 10 minutes ago, at the ones now avoiding eye contact, at the one woman sitting at the head, older, composed, eyes narrowed slightly as she took everything in. His boss. Good. I straightened slightly, smoothing the front of my jacket. "I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday," I said, my tone almost conversational, "and answer your question from 2 weeks ago." He frowned, confused. "What question?" I tilted my head slightly. "The one where you told me I should be grateful you let me in." Recognition hit. Slow, heavy. "I'm not," I said. A beat. "But I am grateful for the clarity." No one spoke. No one moved. The entire room seemed suspended on that single moment. Then I looked back at the table. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I added politely. "The check's all yours." Adrian grabbed my wrist as I turned. "You can't just leave," he hissed. "At least pay the bill." I looked down at his hand on me, then back up at his face. Every version of him I had ever known, charming, confident, persuasive, had collapsed into something desperate and unrecognizable. Slowly, I pulled my arm free. "Let go," I said quietly. He didn't, so I leaned in just enough that only he could hear me. "No." One word. Flat. Final. Then I turned and walked out. Behind me, the silence broke. Not all at once. In pieces. A chair scraping. Someone whispering. A voice rising. His voice, followed by another trying to calm him down. The low murmur of people realizing they were now part of a story they hadn't signed up for. I didn't look back. Not once. By the time I stepped out into the night air, the sound of it had blurred into something distant and irrelevant. For the first time in a long time, I felt still. Not shaking. Not second-guessing. Just done. The next morning, my phone started ringing before I even got out of bed. Not just once. Relentless. Call after call. Text after text. Notifications stacking on top of each other like they were trying to force their way through the silence I had chosen. Adrian. Of course. I let it ring. Watched his name flash across the screen again and again until it stopped meaning anything. Then the messages started coming through. "Naomi, pick up. We need to talk. What you did last night was insane." A pause. Then a different tone. "Please. I messed up, okay? I know I did. Just let me explain." Another pause. Then, "If you don't fix this, you're going to regret it." I stared at that one a second longer than the others. Not because it scared me. Because it didn't. Whatever hold he thought he had over me had already snapped the moment he called me his driver in front of a room full of people. I blocked his number. Just like that. No speech. No warning. Just absence. He didn't stop. He showed up at my house that afternoon. I saw his car from the window before he even knocked. He stood there longer than he should have, shifting his weight, checking his phone, rehearsing something in his head. When he finally knocked, it was softer this time. Careful. Like he understood, at least a little, that things were different now. I didn't answer. He knocked again, waited, knocked harder. "Naomi, I know you're in there," he called, his voice tight. "We need to talk." I stayed exactly where I was, silent, still. After a while, his knocking turned into pacing, then frustration, then nothing. His car pulled away 20 minutes later. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Different tactics each time. Apology, anger, bargaining. Nothing worked. I didn't open the door once. The voicemails came from unknown numbers after that. His voice distorted slightly by bad reception or borrowed phones. "Just talk to me." I didn't mean it like that. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." Then softer. "I miss you." Then sharper again. "You think you're better than me now?" Delete. 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 I didn't listen all the way through. Not anymore. About a week later, I got a message from someone I didn't recognize. It came through LinkedIn. A woman from his company. Her message was careful, professional, like she had rewritten it a few times before sending. "Hi, Naomi. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I was at the dinner last week. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry you were put in that position. I read it once, then again. Also, she continued, you should probably know there's been an internal review happening since that night. That made me pause. I replied, what kind of review? Her response came a few minutes later. HR got involved. There were concerns raised about Adrian's role and some claims he made about projects he was supposedly leading. I leaned back slightly, letting that settle. Claims, of course. Apparently, she added, he's been overstating his responsibilities, taking credit for things he wasn't actually part of. The image clicked into place. The way he talked about his job, the way he carried himself, the way he needed everything to look bigger, better, more important than it actually was. Not just with me, with everyone. Also, she wrote, after another short pause, the woman he brought that night, I already knew, but I waited. They'd been seeing each other, quietly. She's a senior developer on the team. There it was. Clean, simple, predictable. She's distancing herself now, the message continued, after everything that happened. Of course she was. People like Adrian only held value as long as the story around them held up. Once that cracked, everything attached to it started falling away. I thought you deserved to know, she finished. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, thank you, and meant it. It didn't feel like victory. That was the strange part. There was no rush, no satisfaction, no moment where I sat back and thought, good, he got what he deserved. Just quiet, a kind of emotional clearing, like something toxic had finally been removed, and now all that was left was the space it used to occupy. I thought about the last 2 years more than I expected to, not replaying the good moments, reevaluating them, seeing where the edges had always been, where I had ignored them, where I had chosen not to look too closely because I liked how things felt when I didn't. He hadn't changed overnight. I had just finally stopped translating him into someone easier to love. A few days later, I was sitting in my living room, halfway through a project estimate, when there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not urgent, measured, different. I frowned slightly and walked over, glancing through the window before opening it. 2 people stood on the other side. Older, well-dressed, uncomfortable. It took me a second. Then it clicked. Adrian's parents. I had only met them once, briefly in passing, but the resemblance was undeniable. I opened the door slowly. Naomi, his father said. I nodded. He looked at me like he wasn't sure where to start. May we come in? I hesitated, just for a second, then stepped aside. Okay. They walked in carefully, like they were entering a space they weren't sure they deserved to be in. We sat in the living room. The silence stretched. Heavy. Expectant. And then his mother spoke. We wanted to apologize. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Not performative like Adrian's, not polished, just tired. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat across from them and waited. For Adrian, she added quietly. For his behavior. For everything. His father nodded beside her, hands clasped too tightly in his lap. He's not handling things well, he said, since that night. I held his gaze, not unkindly, but without offering comfort either. I can imagine. There was a brief silence. Then his mother reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, placing it gently on the coffee table between us. We made him tell us everything, she said. At first, he came home with a very different version of the story. Something about you embarrassing him, causing a scene. But, she exhaled softly, that didn't last long. His father looked down. He lost his job, he said quietly. There was an internal investigation. Things came out. Things we didn't know about. Or maybe didn't want to know? I thought about the message from his colleague, about the inflated role, the borrowed credit, the image he had been so careful to maintain. It had all collapsed at once. He's back home with us now, his mother continued, trying to figure things out. I nodded once. I'm sorry to hear that. And I meant it, not because I wanted him back, but because no one builds that kind of life without eventually paying for it. Her eyes searched my face like she was trying to see if there was anger there, or satisfaction. There wasn't. Just distance. We're not here to defend him, she said firmly. What he did was wrong. We've always known Adrian could be focused on appearances, material things, status. Her husband let out a quiet breath. We encouraged it, he admitted, more than we should have. That caught my attention. We told him to aim high, he continued, to find someone stable, someone who could support a certain kind of life. A small, humorless smile touched his mouth. We didn't think he'd take that to mean using people. Something in that sentence settled into place. All those little comments. All that quiet superiority. It hadn't come from nowhere. He told us what he said to you, his mother added, her voice tightening slightly. At the party and after. There's no excuse for that. She gestured towards the envelope. That's why we brought this. I reached forward and opened it. Inside was a check, $925. Neatly written, carefully calculated. For the clothes, she said. The gift, the other expenses. There was also a folded piece of paper. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Adrian's. I didn't open it. Not yet. We made him put that together himself, his father said. Sold some things, paid back what he could. I looked at the check for a moment longer, then folded everything back into the envelope. It wasn't about the money, I said. We know, his mother replied softly, but it matters that he understands that what he did had a cost. I studied them, really studied them. They weren't here to fix anything. They weren't asking me to take him back. They weren't even asking for forgiveness. They were just closing something, taking responsibility for the part they had played in shaping him. Thank you for bringing it, I said. And I meant that too. They both seemed to relax, just slightly, like that was all they had hoped for. He's ashamed, his father added after a moment. He wanted to come himself. We told him not to. Not until he understands why that wouldn't be fair to you. I nodded. That was the right call. A small silence followed. Then his mother stood. We won't take any more of your time. I walked them to the door. As they stepped outside, she turned back once. I hope, she said carefully, that this doesn't change how you see yourself. I met her eyes. It doesn't, I said. And that, more than anything, was true. After they left, I stood in the doorway for a long moment before closing it. The house felt quiet again, but not empty. Just mine. I went back to the living room, picked up the envelope, and finally unfolded the letter inside. It was short, messy in a way his messages had never been. No polished sentences, no carefully chosen words. Just, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I didn't realize how bad I sounded until I heard it back. You didn't deserve any of it. I read it once, then folded it back up, and that was enough. Life didn't magically reset after that. It just moved. Work picked up, projects stacked. Days filled themselves in the way they always had before him. But something was different, lighter, cleaner. I started saying no more easily. Started noticing the small things I used to overlook. The way people spoke. The way they treated others when they thought no one important was watching. A few weeks later, I agreed to coffee with someone new. A man I met through a supplier I worked with. He was a kindergarten teacher. Soft-spoken, grounded. When I told him what I did, he didn't blink. Didn't joke. Didn't shift uncomfortably. He just asked questions. Real ones. About the work, about the projects, about what I liked most about building something from nothing. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I needed to shrink any part of myself to fit the conversation. Sometimes I still think about that moment in the ballroom. The exact second Adrian said the word driver. For a long time, I thought that was the worst part. The humiliation. The betrayal. But now, when I replay it, I see it differently. That moment didn't break anything. It revealed it. People don't become cruel in a single sentence. They just stop hiding it. Some do it quietly, in small comments, subtle corrections, little dismissals you can almost pretend you imagined. Others do it all at once, loud enough that you can't ignore it anymore. Either way, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time.